Hello everyone, my name is Garvin and I read things and natter about them on the internet for your entertainment. Today we're continuing our month-long look at some of the works of science fiction author Philip K. Dick by looking at the movie adaptation of Radio Free Albemuth. So this was voted on by my ever-wise patrons who remain steadfast in their desire to continue the tradition of Dick Month. You can join their ranks and get a voice on future content for as little as $1 a month. The link's below. Now, let's turn to the film. In 2004, Utopia Pictures and Television acquired the rights to 3 Philip K. Dick novels, Radio Free Albemuth and Valis, along with Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. Director John Allen Smith was tapped to release the first and so far only film, Radio Free Albemuth, with the idea that if it did well, the novel Valis would be used as a basis for the sequel. How that would work, I have no idea, because Radio Free and Valis seem to take place in different universes, with Valis being the only connection between them. A lot of that is because there's not supposed to be a connection between the novels, due to Valis actually being a fairly radical rewrite of Free Radio Albemuth. I go into the details of that in my written book review of Free Radio Albemuth, which was posted last week. I'll link to that below, though, so you can take a look at that and get further information that way. Back to the movie. The film was released in 2010 at the Sedona Film Festival, and then had a limited release run in selected U.S. cities in 2014. The critics hated it, and the general movie-going public was lukewarm to indifferent at best. So indifferent that to get a copy of this film, I had to order it from the movie's website. It's not even for sale on Amazon. You might be asking, well, how do I feel about it? Well, I tend to give these movies 2 different grades. The first one is based on the movie as a standalone product. How does it work as a movie? And the second grade is, how does this work as an adaptation of a novel? So let's dive in with a fair warning, there are going to be spoilers. Radio Free Albemuth, the film, like the novel, takes place in an alternate universe United States. Unlike the book, which took place in the 70s, having President-for-Life Fremont mirroring Nixon, the movie takes place in 1985, mirroring Reagan instead, I suppose. I honestly find some dark humor in this because the film has Philip K. Dick running about 3 years after his death from a stroke. Then again, this version of Philip K. Dick doesn't seem to have made the life choices that likely destroyed his health, and our Philip K. Dick was only 53 when he died of that stroke, so maybe living in an oppressive police state ironically improved his health. Wow. That's actually kind of depressing when I say that out loud. Anyways, the film follows much of the novel's plot in that we have Philip and Nick as our main characters, but unlike the book, Nick is never a viewpoint character, and a lot of the plot is just narrated to us by Philip K. Dick as a voiceover instead of shown. We have Nick getting visions from Valis, becoming part of a plot to overthrow the president for life, failing, and being murdered by police thugs. We have the same beats as well of Friends of the American People, yes, that's FAP, Mr. Dick, like I said, was not subtle, trying to turn everyone into informers, and the struggle of avoiding collaborating with an oppressive regime hell-bent on making you an accomplice in your own oppression. The film does a good job of copying the major story beats, but drains them of any emotion or impact by cutting away the supporting character interactions. I assume this was due to the time limitations of the medium, but the film suffers for it. We don't see Philip and Nick arguing about whether or not to turn informant, for example. We don't see the emotional and mental struggle they go through. Instead, our characters righteously refuse and never show the slightest temptation at any time. Which was a massive mistake in my view, because it's that struggle that drew me into the novel and gave the story an emotional core. The visions from Valis were also drained of subtext, and we barely see any of them, which is also a mistake. Honestly, it comes across as if the filmmakers were afraid of the religious and spiritual content of the story, and as a result, we don't see Nick's journey to enlightenment and how he becomes willing to die for what he believes in, which is kind of the cornerstone of this story. Strange choice to have the USSR already fallen in 1985, so instead of showing us Nick coming to the belief that the USSR and the United States were just expressions of the same oppressive imperial system that he called Rome, we instead get a sentence of Philip saying Nick believed he was living a life in ancient Rome, but not really showing us any of that. The whole reason Nick picked the name Rome in the novel is because when Americans think of empire, we tend to think Roman, not any literal connection. This was a big mistake in my view because we lose the plot point of how Fremont was never criticized by the Soviets despite him screaming about communists stealing Americans' vital fluids in every speech, and at the same time selling the Soviet Union America's resources at bargain bin prices and pulling back all the troops from overseas to focus on, oppressing his fellow Americans. There's also the issue of the plot to overthrow the president via subliminal messages in pop songs, which I don't think a modern audience was going to buy. I certainly didn't, and the critics didn't buy it either. I know I will get some hate, but I would have changed that, and I'm not sure what I would have changed it to, but I think a modern audience would want something more concrete as the plan. That said, I'll admit I don't really have a real alternative to offer here, so this is going to be a minor complaint at best, because if I can't offer a solution, it seems really unfair to hammer the filmmakers over this. That said, I do feel there were scenes that captured what it would be like to live in an oppressive state. For example, when the group of Phil, Nick, and Rachel, that's Nick's wife, are gathered together and they're struggling to fill out the mandatory feedback cards on the president's weekly address to the nation, they realize any answer they give to these questions can be twisted around against them. There's also the fact that Nick has to worry about his house and office being bugged, that a semi-secret police organization like FAP can just show up to Philip's house and ask him to write up a report on Nick, and one of those members can do drugs in front of Phil and later tell him they hid some drugs in his house as a way to incriminate him, and there are zero consequences for any of the FAP members' behavior. The pressure all the characters feel at almost all times that they are being judged by a distant, uncaring government who is only looking for an excuse to crush them, and there is nothing they can do about it. It could have been done better, but it was done, and not badly. I also thought all the cast did a fairly good job, but I do have to say I feel the ladies were wasted in their roles. Catherine Winnick, now known for her work on the show Vikings, is just given almost nothing of any weight in her role as Rachel, Nick's wife. To be fair, Rachel was not a major presence in the book. In fact, the film really softens the character, which was a good call, so I'm putting that in the plus column for the film. This is due because of Mr. Dick's own issues with wives. He did have 5 failed marriages. In the novel, Rachel comes across as a rather mean, spiteful character in a lot of ways. She's always written as snapping and putting Nick down. You don't see that so much in the film. Here, the softening of the character combined with Miss Winnick's performance gives us a woman who is barely holding on, as she is not sure if her husband is going insane, experiencing real religious revelations, or becoming a pawn for aliens from outer space, but she is determined to do anything she can to keep her marriage and family together, and that makes the character a lot more sympathetic. Alanis Morissette is also in the film and does a credible acting job, but they don't have her sing, despite there being a vision from Valis that proclaims her voice is amazing. I feel like that was a waste as well. I mean, when Dogma had her show up and not speak a word, it was funny. Here, it's a missed opportunity that she's not singing. She's a professional singer. It would have been a big change from the novel to have her character sing the song, but if you're going to hire a famous singer to play a role that revolves around music, I'm going to say you should let them sing. That's just going to be my view, guys. The male actors did pretty well as well. They're carrying this movie. I was willing to believe that they were friends who cared about each other, but I feel the script left down the actors here. So how am I going to rate this? Well, as a standalone movie, it doesn't work. It's honestly a bit boring and shallow despite the topics it covers. It's a boilerplate, righteous people stand up to the government oppression story, but with no action and a downer ending instead of the standard Hollywood happy ending. So you're left feeling, well, gee, what was the point of that? That said, points for being willing to show the downer ending where most of our characters are dead or in forced labor. So that's going to bring the movie up to a D+ as a standalone. As an adaptation, they did a great job of preserving the major scenes of the novel, but drained them of context and weight. Without the following connecting scenes of Nick and Philip arguing and agonizing over cooperating with the government, or really digging into Nick's spiritual journey, the emotional meaning and impact is just lost. The meat is there, but there's no juice or spice. So, as an adaptation, I'm giving it a C- for preserving the form of the story, but losing the meaning. So, honestly, I encourage you to read the novel, but feel free to skip the movie. I think this is a good place to end the video, but I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you found this informative or at least entertaining. If so, leave a like or consider subscribing along with comments. All of those help me in my eternal struggle against the dread Lord algorithm. Terror be on his name. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to Big Steve, my biggest supporter. Next week, we turn to the short story Paycheck, also by Philip K. Dick, and I hope you'll join me there. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, keep reading!